We are coming to you tonight from my own hometown, the borough of the Bronx, New York, just down the street from Yankee Stadium. And for the next hour, some other folks who live here, are going to talk to the man who just a little over 100 days ago stepped into what some have called the second toughest job in America, the mayor of New York City.
New York City is so much bigger than you think. 8.5 million people, 100 different ethnicities, speaking 200 different languages, the largest Jewish population outside of Israel, the largest Muslim population in the hemisphere, the largest Chinese population of any city outside of Asia, more black residents than any city in the U.S., the most billionaires on planet Earth, with millions of others living below the poverty line. And believe it or not, more Trump voters than in any one of a dozen red states that elected him. This past November, this city, for its 112th mayor, chose this guy.
How's it going, guys? Do you have 60 seconds to talk to us about the election?
Zohran Mamdani came from near obscurity to change the way winning campaigns are run.
New York, will you accept this rose?
With a populist message to do something about the cost of living.
How about the cost of living?
Sucks.
We're going to make buses fast and...
His rise made him a rock star on the left and a boogeyman on the right.
We put in a communist.
No one is safe.
I have friends of mine in New York. They are officially depressed and scared.
And even if he's managed to tame the man in the White House,
We agree on a lot more than I would have thought.
in the end, he's still got to run this city.
I've been watching you.
Tonight, All In comes to the Bronx for a special town hall with the mayor and the people. This is All In America with Mayor Zohran Mamdani.
Good evening from the amazing Bronx Children's Museum. I'm Chris Hayes. This was the front page of the New York Post the day Zohran Mamdani was elected mayor of New York City. The red apple. Very good at that. It's the culmination of one of the most improbable political stories of the Trump age. A grassroots progressive campaign like no one had ever seen before, with more opposition from Republicans, from a Democratic political dynasty, from the president, from the media that we'd ever seen. And he won with a laser focus on a core message of making it more affordable for the people who live here. It's been a little over 100 days. The city has not fallen into communism just yet, but he does have a job to do. We've invited an audience of New Yorkers to join us here, some of whom voted for this mayor, some of who didn't. Some are supportive of his policies and others are not. But this is New York, so no one is ever going to be shy about sharing an opinion, and the mayor isn't shy about hearing them. So let's welcome now Mayor Zohran Mamdani. Good to see you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for having me.
I wore a suit so I can match your energy.
Thank you.
You were an assembly member just like the last time, maybe the last time I saw you, actually, and just a few months ago. It's a very different job than this job. What's the biggest thing you've learned, the biggest realization you've had actually being in that position?
I think the biggest thing, first and foremost, is that New Yorkers' trust for all of the big ideas that we have about delivering universal child care, about making the most expensive city in America affordable for working class people who help keep it running. That trust starts when you fill in those potholes. Because you can't tell someone to trust city government in its ability to deliver free childcare for 2-year-olds for the first time in its history if they can look out the window and see the same pothole unfilled as it was the day before, the week before, the month before, the year before. And so at the same time that we've been pursuing this agenda that would transform the lives of New Yorkers, delivering a pathway to universal childcare on day 8, we've also filled in 102,000 potholes in that same 100-day period. We started to repave more than 1,000 miles of roadway. And all of this comes back from a belief that there's no problem too big, no task too small, and we call this pothole politics.
Well, there's this phrase called sewer socialism.
Yes,
it comes out of the Milwaukee particularly, right? There's a number of socialist mayors in Milwaukee, and the idea that the only way you deliver on your ideology, whatever it is, no matter, and particularly if it's a radical one, is that you have to give people clean water and things like that. Are you informed by that tradition? Is that something you're thinking about?
Very much so. I think oftentimes people think of politics as an intellectual debate. Working people want to know if you can actually deliver for them. And one of those mayors in Milwaukee, their phrase was, go after it and get it. We've talked about this for long enough. New Yorkers want to see, can you actually deliver on these things? And they want to measure it in the way that they experience government on a day-to-day basis. That's why we're focusing on the little things while also pursuing the big ones.
Do you think that you have, Mayor of New York is always somewhat of a national figure, kind of. They also never have a national career in politics. Those two things I think are related. It's a tough job to come out of everyone being like, that guy's awesome. Do you feel like you're carrying an ideological burden for the flag of democratic socialism, which you proudly are, right? And you're the most powerful democratic socialist in the country. And people are going to point to whether things go well here or poorly here as evidence of whether that's an ideology that is worth anything.
Well, I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, which is that the worth of an ideology is judged in its delivery. And to me, this is an incredible opportunity. We've been told for so long, even over the course of the campaign, that things like universal child care could never be done. On day 8, I stood next to Governor Hochul. We announced $1.2 billion in funding that will now, for the first time in New York City history, deliver free child care for 2-year-olds. And that is something that you don't have to explain to a parent.
Right. But you got 2,000, just to be clear, you got 2,000 seats. Mm-hmm. It's a big city, 8 million people.
2,000 seats this year,
right.
12,000 seats next year, and then every single 2-year-old by the end of year 4. And the importance of that.
By year 4, if it happens, right?
It will happen. This is not an inshallah promise.
Right, okay.
This is definitely happening. And I say that to you because, Senator Warren talks about child care as infrastructure. The way that you deliver this, it's not just a question of securing the funding. It's also working with the child care providers who have been at the heart of what's made it possible for so many families to be here and building out their capacity to deliver for more children than we've ever seen engaging in this kind of service in New York City.
Affordability, which we're going to talk through throughout the hour, was the sort of central.
I was thinking about it.
No, yes. Well, you're very on message, which, to your credit. In the mayoral election before you were elected, and particularly coming out of 2020, 2021, there's a huge amount of attention on policing and crime, right? And we saw a big uptick in crime in New York City and nationally. We're seeing something pretty remarkable happening, which is basically the inverse. And, you came out and celebrated the lowest homicide rate I think the city's recorded in many, many decades. But it's not just New York City. Mayor Lurie in San Francisco is going to take credit for it there, and Brandon Scott in Baltimore, Kash Patel at the FBI, and Donald Trump in the White House are going around saying, hey, we've got the lowest crime rate ever because of what I did. What is your understanding or theory for what is happening with crime in your city?
Well, I think there's a few things. We're seeing that our approach to public safety is working, and not just in a sense of a general decline, but to actually correct you a little, it's not just the lowest number of murders in the last few decades. It's the lowest number of murders ever in recorded history. Yes. The joint lowest number of shootings. It's a decline of crime across major categories by more than 9%. It's also not enough. New Yorkers do not measure their lives by statistics. They want to know that you are doing everything in your power to deliver public safety. And the importance of public safety, it's not actually divorced from the conversation around affordability. It's the cornerstone. It's the platform that allows you to do that work of affordability. Because if someone is not safe in their city, then that is the first concern they have, even before the other ones that we speak about.
I mean, let me give an interpretation of what I've seen, and you could respond to it, which is that progressive governance is impossible if people are scared. And progressive politics essentially become choked off. And what I've seen is you're someone who has had these commitments to fast and free buses and universal childcare. When you look at policing, there's things you've said you want to do. You want to get rid of this gang database, which is, you've been very critical of. There's a special unit that sort of polices protests you said you want to disband. The gang database is still there. The special unit that polices protests just arrested a bunch of people at a protest. From the outside, it looks like you basically said, look, I'm not going to touch the policing stuff. It's too dangerous, either substantively or politically. I'm going to focus on this other stuff, and I'm going to let the commissioner and sort of status quo policing continue. Is that a fair characterization?
I wouldn't say so. I'll push you on it a little bit for a few reasons. One of the reasons that I made the decision to retain our police commissioner was not just because of what she was delivering in terms of public safety, but also how she'd been able to uproot corruption from the upper echelons of the NYPD. We need a government that is not just efficient, but also excellent, one that can be trusted in the work that it does. Now, my belief in the importance of disbanding the Strategic Response Group, it continues just as strongly as it was during the campaign. The reason for that is I don't think we need to couple our response to protests with our response to counterterrorism threats. This is a modern conflation that has happened, and it's one that I'm committed to disbanding. The disbanding of it is one that we're going to do thoughtfully to ensure that we are also respecting the right to protest and keeping New Yorkers safe. But again, it's not an if for me, it's a when.
You've gotten a lot of attention for the relationship that you have cultivated with the president. You've been asked about this a lot. It is, I mean, I got to say, again, from the outside, it's an amusing thing to watch, particularly when you said to the reporter in front of him, like, no, he is a fascist. And he said, no, it's okay, go ahead and answer, what's going on there? Like, what is it? Explain it. Why? How did this happen?
You know, when you were introducing this and we were stepping out, you were saying, these are New Yorkers.
Right.
No one's going to be shy about their opinions. And in many ways, one of the few things the president and I have in common is that we are both New Yorkers. For all of our political disagreements, we have one agreement of chief importance, which is that we love this city. And with the president, I'm honest, I'm direct, and I try and always bring it back to what would actually benefit this city. So when I'm sitting there with the president and I'm talking about the opportunity to work together to deliver more housing than we've seen in a single housing development since the early 1970s, I'm also speaking about the fact that I think that ICE raids are cruel and inhumane, and that the fact that that morning they had detained a Columbia student is part and parcel of why this is not something that is actually serving the interests of public safety. And so I gave the president a list of 5 names of people who were detained in or around Columbia. He called me 30 minutes after the meeting and said, I've made the decision to release the student that you brought up.
He's not happy with the new tax plan on the basically second homes for very, very wealthy people. He said, you're destroying New York. It has no chance. The United States of America should not contribute to its failure. It'll only get worse. The tax policies are so wrong. People are fleeing. This must change our ways and fast. History has proven this stuff just doesn't work. Thank you for attention to this matter. It did seem a little more in sorrow than in anger. He felt a little betrayed.
Well, I think the president knows exactly where I stand on these issues, and I know where the president stands on these issues. I ran a campaign speaking very plainly about the fact that in the wealthiest city in the wealthiest country in the world, it's unacceptable that 1 in 4 New Yorkers are living in poverty. And as we're facing a generational fiscal deficit, I believe it's only right to ask those who don't live in New York City, but who own a second home in New York City, and that second home is worth more than $5 million in New York City, to pay a little bit more so that everyone can afford to live here.
It did occur to me he might actually have to pay the tax.
We don't have exceptions in our taxes that we propose.
You mentioned ICE and you mentioned immigration. I mean, it has been notable that we've had this, trail of elevated ICE enforcement and CBP enforcement that we saw in Los Angeles, we saw it in Chicago, we of course very famously saw it in Minneapolis and the Twin Cities. There have been elevated ICE enforcement here in New York City. They've been at the courts and things like that, but we have not seen something like the operation in Minneapolis. Does that hang over you as a kind of sword of Damocles? Does it feel like it's something the president could threaten every moment? Do you feel like part of your relationship with him is staving that off, to be honest?
I mean, my relationship with the president is important to deliver for New Yorkers. And I've made it very clear to the president that increased ICE presence, it would just be an increase on what we've seen with ICE raids, which is just cruel and inhumane. I've also been honest about the fact that I think ICE is an agency that should be abolished. It's a modern creation. Our country has had answers to immigration long before we had ICE. And we also see that these kinds of raids, just a few nights ago, ICE detained a delivery worker. This is a man who came to this city with the dreams of building up a life for himself and his family. No active investigation, no warrant. He finished a Grubhub delivery and then was taken by armed, masked federal agents. That's what we're talking about here in New York City. It's the public school student, Dylan Contreras, whose family we worked with to ensure that he would come home. That's the kind of person that's getting detained in this city, and that's why New Yorkers are sick of this approach, one, frankly, of a complete absence of humanity.